They tell a story about this fellow who told his friend, I've been happily married for 6 years. His friend says, 6 years? I know you've been married for at least over 30 years. He says, I know I've been married for over 30 years, but I've been happily married for 6 years. We all look at stages of our life and say, oh, those were the best years of my life. Well, the same thing is true with Jacob. Jacob in this week's Torah portion passes away at the age of 147. But the opening words of the Torah portion was, Vayichi Yaakov. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, and he died at the age of 147. And our rabbis point out that the word Vayichi, if you take the 4 letters, Vav, Yud, Ches, Yud, it's the 6th, 10th, 8th, and 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which equals 34. And our rabbis say the numerical value of the word, and he lived, Vayichi, is 34. That the best years of Jacob's life, the years that he truly lived, were 34 years. Which 34 years? Well, when Joseph was thrown into the pit and taken away from Jacob, Joseph was 17 years old. So the first 17 years of his life, when he was together with Joseph, and then the last 17 years, reunited with Joseph in the land of Egypt, those were the 34 best years of his life. But our rabbis say between the first 17 and the last 17, which were the greater ones? So our rabbis say it was the last 17 years of Jacob's life that were the best years of his life. The years that he was reunited with his son Joseph and his entire family. And indeed we find Jacob on his deathbed, and he blesses all his children, and he blesses his grandchildren, and he passes away with these words. His children turn to him and say, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, our father Israel. Jacob's name was Israel. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Lord is our God, the Lord is one. We all have your faith, and we will perpetuate your legacy. And when Jacob hears that, he says, Baruch Shem, Kavod Malchus Olam Vad, may the name of God's kingdom be praised for eternity. This Shema Yisrael and Baruch Shem that we say every day in the Shema is the last conversation between Jacob and his children. But the question is, how could the last years in the land of Egypt, a foreign alien land and culture, be the best years of Jacob's life over the first 17 years when he was in Israel, the homeland, with his ancestors, his patriarchal and matriarchal ancestral land? And the answer is that in life, right now, it's a beautiful sunny day. But the only reason you really appreciate the light is because you experience darkness. If you only had light perpetually, you wouldn't appreciate it. You would take it for granted. That's why Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden had only light. The sun never set on the first Friday night. It was only Saturday night that they made Havdalah with fire. They made fire for the first time because they experienced darkness. But sometimes in life, until we face a challenge or a struggle, we don't appreciate the blessings that we have in our life. And so it's only after the struggles that Jacob went through with losing his beloved son Joseph, and now he's reunited with his whole family, and his family's living in peace and harmony, now he could really enjoy those 17 years and have a deeper appreciation for it than he ever had for any other years of his life. And therefore, yes, the last 17 years in Egypt were the best years of his life. It's a story told about this yeshiva boy who was going through a lot of hardships, struggles. He went to a great rabbi in Jerusalem whose name was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he started to cry about all his problems. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said, come with me. And he took him for a walk in Jerusalem. He didn't know where he was going. And he took him into a tailor shop. And he showed him rows and rows of shelves with the most beautiful, expensive, fine fabrics. Then he said, watch what the tailor does. And he sees the way the tailor is taking off different rolls from the shelves, takes out a big scissor and is cutting up pieces of fabric. And he said to the boy, why is he cutting up the beautiful fabric and laying different size pieces on his table? And he said, you know why? Because obviously he's now going to sew them together and make the most beautiful garment. He's going to create a beautiful coat or a beautiful suit. But the only way to create that was he had to cut up all the different pieces out of the beautiful rolls of fabric. He said sometimes you feel like you're being cut into pieces. You feel like you're being chopped up. You feel like you're going through so many struggles. But he says God is creating something magnificent, something beautiful in your life. Because yes, like Jacob, the 17 years after his struggles were the greatest years of his life with the deepest joy and the deepest appreciation. Have a wonderful Shabbat.